Recording. Hi Cass, this is the recording for book show number 3. Sometimes we might need to take long pauses for the book show, just to look at notes and stuff. Okay. Why do you find that so funny?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know?
Action.
Alright. Welcome back to the BARROW Podcast, to the book show. Today we're going to be looking at Blue Nights by Joan Didion. So, Joan Didion. Okay, I kind of felt like we couldn't talk about memoir without talking about Joan Didion a little bit. Didion was I always have trouble sort of describing her, because she was sort of known as being like an essayist and somebody who, you know, was like a cultural commentator.
Right.
I think she wrote for Vanity Fair or something like that. And yeah, her collections of essays are pretty famous. So I think it's the White Album is one, and anyway, people know her. What is it? Slouching Towards Bethlehem, A Book of Common Prayer. I thought there was something called the White Album. Anyway, I could be wrong. But I always knew Didion as a fiction author. So like I was really obsessed with her novel Play It As It Lays, which is comprised of all these really short chapters.
Right.
And it introduced me to the concept of vignettes, which are super short pieces, very short chapters, and that's something we'll talk about in the next book show episode, because we're gonna, well, not the next one, the one after, we'll talk about that Suzanne book, and that uses vignettes really well. Blue Nights is her other her other memoir.
Yeah, that's right.
Because like she wrote the year of magical thinking, which was about her husband passing away. Okay. And this one is about her daughter passing away. So not, you know, the happiest life in the end.
No.
Lots of tragedy, lots of sadness, but you know, it's kind of it's an interesting book, because there's a few things I want to say about Didion, and then this brings up a whole bunch of stuff for us, and
yeah.
I mean, look, I wanted to start with this. The quote, the sort of Didion quote, the quote that's attributed to her a lot is, we tell ourselves stories in order to live, which might even be the title of a collection. But like, we tell ourselves stories in order to live has a double meaning, right?
That's right.
So
not really paying attention to.
Yeah, like it can go either way. Like we tell ourselves stories in order to live is we tell ourselves stories as human beings who are invested in this storytelling enterprise. But then it also has that secondary meaning, which is that we delude ourselves and we tell ourselves a narrative that comforts us.
Justifying the narratives.
Yeah.
To sort of explain the life and maybe the decisions.
Yeah. Is that relatable?
It's absolutely relatable.
Well, look, you know, I mean, we talk about narrative. We talk about narratives and what narratives we hang on to. So how did you like this book?
I know, I found it really, really interesting, and in that sense of she's sort of looking back and trying to understand how her life has gone in in relation to the narrative that she had in her head.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sort of realising, I think, along the way that she didn't quite understand some things in her life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or she didn't attach the right meanings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I think Didion's been criticised a little bit with this book of like, well, she doesn't really understand her daughter or didn't really see her daughter. But reading it through most recently, which for me was the second reading, I think the same for you. I was kind of like, but she's pretty upfront about that. Like, I mean,
I think she is. She's absolutely upfront. But the whole crux of that was the adoption.
Yeah.
Of the daughter.
Yeah. So I'll read. Let me just read the blurb so we can kind of like contextualize this. So, Joan Didion's memoir, The Year of Magical Thinking, is an iconic account of loss and love. Shortly after its publication, Didion lost her daughter Quintana at the age of just 39. Blue Nights opens on July 26, 2010, the day that should have been Quintana's 7th wedding anniversary. The day triggers vivid memories of Quintana's childhood, but also reflections on Didion's role as a parent and on her own life. Her doubts about having children, her thoughts and fears about illness and growing old. From one of our most powerful writers, Blue Nights is a book of incisive and electric honesty and a work of stunning frankness about losing a child. And I think that, I agree with you. Like, she is really upfront about that. And the book is a meditation. The book is a reflection on what I missed, what I didn't understand, what I got wrong.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So has there been criticism of that?
I'm trying to, I thought that there was.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's, to me, what the book is about. She's acknowledging that. Yeah. And of course it brings up a lot about adoption itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, like at the crux of the book is the fact that Quintana was adopted, and Didion has all these sorts of, beliefs that are cultural and social beliefs of the time. Like, people have different advice for her. Like Didion's parents' generation are like, you don't tell the child they're adopted, you just ignore it.
Yes.
Didion's generation are coming into this idea that you tell them, but that it's not impactful because, as she puts it, the adoption story that they're putting forward is, hey, you were chosen. But what she
failed to sort of acknowledge was the child's own fear.
Yeah.
Because that comes up time and time again. Quintana's questions, well, what if you didn't choose me? What if they hadn't called you on that day and you'd chosen another one? That comes right through the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that really brought home to me a lot about adoption.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
abandonment.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so
the child's always conscious. I get from that book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which Didion doesn't sort of recognise in the moment, but looking back, she sees it.
Of course.
Yeah. I find it interesting. So what she says, and she says this really well, is that she says, we had put forward to Quintana always the idea that, hey, look, you were chosen. You were chosen.
Yeah. So it's even more special.
So it's even more special than a regular birth because you were not just born, you were then selected.
Yes.
And she says something to the effect of, but what I failed to understand is that what is on the other side of that?
Yeah.
Well, on the other side of being chosen is not being chosen originally.
That's right.
That you were given away.
Given up.
Yeah.
And then the absolute chance of all of it. Well, what if someone else had chosen me, not so.
Yeah.
See, there's also a look at the privileged
absolutely.
lifestyle that she has adopted into.
Yeah. For people who don't know, like Joan Didion was married to another writer, John Gregory Dunn. is it John Gregory Dunn? John Dunn, anyway. But they were like a writing couple, and they wrote screenplays together, including an adaptation, I think, of Played as It Lays. They also wrote a early Al Pacino movie called The Panic in Needle Park, which is like a Manhattan, New York, old sort of 70s style heroin movie. It's great film. Really cool movie. But so they live in this kind of like, I mean, they live in a bubble. Like they live in a California, Hollywood heyday, 60s, 70s to, New York.
And that was one of the points that resonated with me too. Like she is, because of this bubble that the parents are in, she's having sort of privileged experiences, travel. She's, and this is relevant to our situation. She's mixing with like celebrities. It's just a different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
she's becomes a little adult. That was the point that I was making in relation to you.
Yeah.
She has these very adult experiences.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, she's described as sort of like, she gets taken out of school to go to like the set of a film because her parents are shooting and have to be on that set. And I can't remember who it is. It's like an old Hollywood actor. It's like a Robert Redford. Maybe it is Redford. I can't remember, but it's somebody like that. And it's like you're sort of spending your summer with an actor's children, and you're spending your summer with whoever, whatever, and she's learning to order room service, and she's learning. There is a really funny account where Didion says she's reflecting on one year, and she says that was the year that Quintana learned the difference between on expenses and not on expenses, because she wants to order more caviar.
And I wasn't making the comparison to we were not living a celebrity life, but in terms of you having adult experiences and travel, all the things that adults were enjoying, and they were sort of above your head. Yeah. No, I mean, I certainly had experiences of travel. Much like Quintana, I was the only child, so I was doted upon. I was also, much like Quintana, like, taken to restaurants to eat the food that the adults are eating, sit at the adult table, get dressed up. Like I was often dressed up. So all that kind of thing is very relatable. But, Didion talks to privilege quite a bit. Like she says, like, well, okay, these weren't typical experiences, and Quintana did have some privilege, and it's like, but her fears were so common, her experience of life was so ordinary, and particularly like, I mean, Quintana is really super intelligent, sensitive, precocious child. Like she calls a mental health hospital, like a mental institution, at the age of 5, and is asking over the phone, like, well, what would have to happen for me to end up in there? And so she has all these fears about kind of going over to some sort of dark place. And like, it's clear that there is, just something lurking in her mind, something lingering in her mind, that she has this doubt that, and this was relatable to me, is that like, once abandoned, the child fears being left, fears being abandoned forever after. Always. And like part of the, us coming and working on the memoir has been like all the stuff I'm quoted as saying as a child. Like I am absolutely terrified that I'm going to be left again. Like after my father leaves, I keep wondering who's going to go next. Is mum going to go next? Are my grandparents going to go next? There is no stability from there on out, and that is what Didion, I think, can't realize in the moment, but upon reflection starts to understand. Yeah, but because she can't realize that in the moment, that's relatable to me.
Absolutely,
because again, I'm not seeing what you're experiencing.
No, you're like Didion. You're giving me the trappings of like what is a quote unquote good life.
Yeah.
in material terms and education. But
and you're also sure of your commitment, as Joan Didion was.
Yeah.
But that doesn't alleviate the fears in the child.
No, that's not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And that's the thing, is that, you know, the difficulty that I faced and the difficulty of, you know, the trappings of privilege, the difficulty of the only child's position as well, which is that, you know, as an only child, people go, oh, you're spoiled, you get material things. It's like, you have no idea how these things are just water off a duck's back. Like which is worse in a way, because you're seen as ungrateful.
Yes.
So like,
yes.
You know, with like Quintana, I can relate, like, you're giving me things and you're saying, I'll always be here. But for me, the stuff you're giving me is like, well, that doesn't alleviate my insecurity. And you can say 1,000 times, I'll always be here. But my father, who was meant to always be here, did leave.
Yeah.
So I don't trust anything.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, that only goes tenfold for adoption. Like, if you are an adopted child, I think, it's very, you know, destabilizing to
and that's really highlighted in the book, isn't it? That her Quintana's constant questioning, well, what if you hadn't chosen me? And then that brings a whole you know, more of a deeper understanding of adoption itself. And your father was adopted.
Yeah.
And again, that wasn't really seen or talked about at a deeply emotional level.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to have a little look over my notes. What else do you have to say?
Well, it was interesting, Joan Didion's quest to have a child and the conflict in her. She wanted one, she didn't want one, and that certainly resonated with me. So, you know, that was interesting.
Yeah. I'm just going to have a little look at the book too. I definitely marked some passages. I'm just trying to find them now. Yeah, so you're talking about, she does this section. I'll just read from the book. What if you hadn't been home when Dr. Watson called? What if you couldn't meet him at the hospital? What if there'd been an accident on the freeway? What would happen to me then? Didion writes, all adopted children, I am told, fear that they will be abandoned by their adoptive parents, as they believe themselves to have been abandoned by their natural. They are programmed by the unique circumstances of their introduction into the family structure to see abandonment as their role, their fate, the destiny that will overtake them unless they outrun it. Quintana.
Yeah.
All adoptive parents, I do not need to be told, fear that they do not deserve the child they were given, that the child will be taken from them. Quintana. Quintana is one of the areas about which I have difficulty being direct. I said early on that adoption is hard to get right, but I did not tell you why. Of course you wouldn't tell her she's adopted, many people said at the time she was born. Most of these people the age of my parents, a generation like that of Diana's parents, for which adoption remained obscurely shameful, a secret to be kept at any cost. You couldn't possibly tell her. Of course we could possibly tell her. And then it goes on from there. And it's sort of like, I found it particularly interesting, the idea of fate, like that, you know, I mean, she's projecting into Quintana's head and suggesting that Quintana feels fated to be left.
Because she's been abandoned once.
Yeah.
That will be her end.
And I have that. Like, I that has been the thing that has haunted me my whole life, is being left. Like, I am so terrified to be alone, and I think it's always coming. It's always happening. Everybody's going to just desert me. And I have this you know, I'm hypersensitive to rejection. So any little bit of rejection is like,
here it comes.
Yeah, oh, great, here we go. I'm going to be ruined. I'm going to be ruined.
Yeah, and see, from the parents' point of view, in our situation, when the father leaves, it is an overcompensation. Well, of course, we're going to be here forever. So it's a non-understanding of what's happening in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Didion goes, yeah, go.
No, but she talks of those different eras of like some people, you know, you don't tell them, and that was a different experience again for your father.
Yeah.
Because that should have been a generation when that was kept a secret.
Perhaps. Yeah, perhaps in that case. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you don't really know what to do in that, yeah. Didion talks about having something she describes as muddled impulses, which I quite liked, where she's trying to get the publicity team related to the film they're working on to not mention that Quintana's been around, because it's being shot on a location near the biological family.
That's right. Right. They're filming in a particular locality. Yes.
And she writes that, I stress that under no condition should Quintana's name appear in connection with the picture. There was no reason to think that it would, but I had to be sure. I had to cover that base. Yeah. I had to make that effort. I believed, as I did so, that I was protecting both Quintana and her mother. I tell you this now by way of suggesting the muddled impulses that can go hand in hand with adoption. Yes. The muddled impulses of protecting and sort of defending, but like doing for or doing more for. What are
your real motivations?
Yeah, it was really interesting to me. I was like, yeah, that does, you know, track in terms of, you know, my experiences, my personal experiences, but my experiences of rather my observations of other people and their lives and families as well. There's a lot to like in terms of Didion's writing. I think that, like, I don't know what you want to say about the writing itself, if you have anything to say on that.
No, well, she really gets into those thought processes, I think.
Yeah. She
her own, and in retrospect, Quintana's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I liked about, like, the writing itself with her is that, you know, it's really sparse, it's really spare, it's quite minimal, and you know, she generally, you know, leans towards short chapters, and she does a few things that I think are really interesting. Like, she does something that I love, which is that she describes photographs, and I find that really endearing. I don't know why. There's kind of like a cross media thing going on where you're writing about an image. I always like that, and because when somebody passes, or you are reflecting, you know, an essential part of that is going back through photographs. And you and I have spent a lot of time looking at photos, right? Like, a big effort that has been made here recently was to organize photographs. Like, we're actually surrounded in this room by photo albums. Yeah. They're lining behind you and they're lining behind me. And you know, it was sort of putting them in order, deciding which ones to keep, which ones to throw out. I threw out a lot of photos. And then I still have boxes of photos of, you know, like my father and I that I find really creepy, and I don't know what to do with. How
do you look at those? When you're looking at those specifically, do you see more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of
Absolutely.
of the experiences.
Yeah. Like, I mean, now, you know, I went through many of them actually with Bella, and you know, she's
a person who has not had these experiences, so she can look at them.
Yeah, but she also, like, she sees disconnection. Like, she sees us trying to look anywhere but at each other, and I can see that now too. I can see discomfort. I can see us sort of not meeting each other's eye in almost all of them. Like, it's actually quite it's quite evident, the lack of connection.
And I think you and I have seen that in photos of the mother.
Yeah, that she's sort of and you wonder if that's just projection, or if it's like, no, I've actually really reflected and I see some of what, I mean, it's not in every single one, of course, but it's like you can, moments that have been captured where it's like, I actually sort of see that differently now. And there's something true or authentic that's been captured in that photograph. So I always like these descriptions of photographs, and she has a couple of passages of that. But the other thing that she does throughout, which I really like, is that she does this thing of, like, I don't know what to call it. It's sort of like she makes motifs through this kind of almost like quote stacking, quote layering, quote echoing. So she takes a line that she writes, but then she repeats it later in isolation. But then she takes several and then she runs them over the top of each other and makes new meaning. So it's almost like poetry in a way where you, well, maybe poetry is the wrong word, but it's like you're taking these individual parts and then you're stacking them over the top, and then from that rundown you get a new meaning, or you, not really a new meaning, you deepen the meaning. So, like, she does that a lot, and it's not
can you think of some of those sort of statements?
I've got
I think I've written them down too, but
I've got some passages marked, of course. So, because she italicizes, as adults, we lose memory of the gravity and terrors of childhood. And then she brings in these quotes. Hello, Quintana. I'm going to lock you here in the garage. New line. After I became 5, I never ever dreamed about him. New line. I have to know about this. New line. And so, like, those three, hello, Quintana, I'm going to lock you here in the garage. Line 2, after I become 5, I never dreamed about him. Line 3, I have to know about this. Like, those are 3 separate sentences from different parts of the book to this point, but then she puts them closer together. And she does it again, like, she does it a lot. Like, I can't, grab all of them, but certainly just find another passage. I quite like this, where she's thinking about she's reflecting on sort of editing this book, and then she says, considerable time passes before I realize that my preoccupation with the words she used has screened off any possible apprehension of what she was actually saying when she wrote her journal entry on that March day in 1984. Was that deliberate? Was I screening off what she said about her fear of life the same way I had screened off what she said about her fear of the broken man? And then
she talks about editing her daughter's
journal
writing. And in that moment, she's the writer, not the mother, seeing what the child is actually saying.
It's a really good passage. And she goes on, just let me get it, but she goes on from there, and then she repeats those lines. Hello, Quintana, I'm going to lock you here in the garage. After I became 5, I never ever dreamed about him. Then Didion comes back. Did I all her life keep a baffle between us? Did I prefer not to hear what she was actually saying? Did it frighten me? I try the passage again, this time reading for meaning. What she said.
Yes.
What she said, my present fear of life. What she said, pass into nothingness. What she was actually saying, the world has nothing but morning and night. It has no day or lunch. Let me just be in the ground. Let me just be in the ground and go to sleep. When I tell you that I am afraid to get up from a folding chair in a rehearsal room on West 42nd Street, is this what I'm actually saying? Does it frighten me? So she starts to like run Quintana's lines into her own lines there, and sort of merge the childhood fears with her present fears and push them together. It's really effective.
But isn't that what we do when we're not understanding?
Yeah.
I remember a certain family member talking about some writing and looking at it from a writing perspective. Oh, I like the characterization.
Yeah.
But not really seeing what the writer was describing as real.
Can you tell me, who are you talking about there?
I'm talking about Dad.
You're talking about your father.
In relation to
me.
Your writing.
Ah, okay, right.
So it's seen as an academic exercise rather than, wow, what's he really saying here?
Yeah. That's okay. You can say that.
Yeah.
You don't have to disguise that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean.
I know what you mean now. Yeah, that's funny. Yes. I mean that's the thing. It's
so she I don't really get those criticisms you were talking about before, because she is really looking at herself and what she did and what she didn't do in terms of understanding her daughter.
Yeah, I it makes even less sense to me now. Perhaps I misinterpreted what was being said.
Okay.
Said now upon reflection, I'm like, maybe I kind of jumped the gun a little bit with what I was saying. But yeah, look, I'm gonna do, I think on the Substack, I'm gonna do some. Because if you haven't joined the mailing list already, please do. Because I do write kind of like a blog, and I extend these reading book show episodes with, reflections on the book that we do. But there's a few things in this book that I want to write about in terms of like the writing itself. There's just so much. There's so many interesting things, like that example that we've just kind of gone into of this layering of lines. The book, by the way, is only 200 pages, and it's pretty effortless. Like it's very easy to read. So don't let my sort of discussion of the poetry of it and my meandering sort of put you off and say that's complex or too intellectual. It's really not. And I thoroughly recommend it, and I recommend all her writing. But this is a great example of what you can do with memoir, and that is kind of more the point that I wanted to make. I'll write some things about the writing stuff that I really like. There's a few things I want to say, but just for the purpose of today's episode and wrapping up now, I just wanted to say that it's a really good example of what you can do with memoir, because memoir is, it's about memory, and it's not an autobiography, it's not a biography, it's not the whole life, it's a chunk of time.
And it's not a journal of successive dates.
No. It's memory, and it's feeling, and it's reflection.
Yeah.
And it can be contemplative, it can be it can be a little dreamy, little dreamlike, because that's what memory is. It's a little fractured, it's a little kind of alien, but grounded at the same time. It's all sorts of things, and this is a really good example. It's very, it's just really, really well constructed. It's like light and dense at the same time. And that's a really great achievement, I think.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add about this, or?
No.
Okay. Your stomach just grumbled so much.
I know. So loudly. So loudly.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Your stomach says, no, there's nothing left to say. Feed me, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right. We're going to go get something to eat. Bye.
Bye.